You might think famous stars live flawless lives, always glowing under the spotlight, but that illusion couldn't be further from the truth. Behind the dazzling smiles and thunderous applause, many Black legends and celebrities have quietly battled physical disabilities, along with pain, resilience, and strength the world rarely sees. Today, I'm about to reveal 21 powerful and inspiring stories of Black celebrities who turned adversity into triumph. Brace yourself, because some of the names on this list may truly surprise you. Curtis Mayfield. From a fallen stage to an eternal song. In the turbulent streets of 1960s Chicago, where injustice was loud and hope often felt distant, a voice rose like a cleansing wind. That voice belonged to Curtis Mayfield. He wasn't just a singer or a brilliant songwriter, he was the conscience of a generation. Through his music, Black Americans heard their pain, their dreams, and their unbreakable desire for freedom. Songs like "People Get Ready" weren't simply meant to be heard, they were meant to be felt. They gave people strength, courage, and a reason to stand tall in the face of oppression. But life, much like the truths Curtis sang about, was never gentle and never fair. On August 13, 1990, New York City baked under a suffocating summer heat. At Wingate Field in Brooklyn, thousands of fans gathered, buzzing with anticipation. Curtis Mayfield stepped onto the stage, slim in frame, vibrant in spirit, completely unaware that this performance would change his life forever. Without warning, a violent gust of wind ripped through the stage. A massive 600-pound lighting rig began to sway, then came crashing down. In a split second, there was no time to run. The structure struck Curtis directly. Cheers dissolved into horror. Music gave way to silence. Rushed to the hospital, Curtis awoke to a nightmare no artist could imagine. His body no longer responded. Doctors stood at his bedside and delivered the crushing truth. He was paralyzed from the neck down. No more standing under the spotlight. No more holding his guitar. Even the simplest movements would now depend on others. A life defined by motion and music had been forced into stillness. Yet the accident did not steal his spirit. After days of pain, grief, and darkness, Curtis reached deep inside himself and found the same strength he had always shared with the world. Confined to a hospital bed, unable to sit or play, he continued to create. Lying flat on his back, using gravity just to breathe, he softly sang every lyric, every melody, while others carefully wrote his words down. From that quiet room, without a stage or spotlight, Curtis Mayfield created New World Order, his final album, released in 1996. It wasn't just a record. It was a declaration, a testament to a soul that refused to surrender. Curtis lived 9 more years after that tragic day. Though his body never recovered, his creativity never faded. From his bed, he continued to compose, to dream, and to pour messages of hope, justice, and freedom into his music. In 1999, Curtis Mayfield passed away from complications of diabetes, closing the final chapter of a life marked by struggle, but illuminated by unshakable resolve. Curtis Mayfield may have left this world, but his voice never did. His music still echoes through time, reminding us that courage, faith, and passion can rise, even from the deepest silence, and turn tragedy into something eternal. Denzel Washington. One imperfect finger and the hands that went on to write a legend. By the late 1980s, the name Denzel Washington had become a point of pride in American cinema, especially within the Black community. With his piercing stare, commanding voice, and emotionally charged performances, he brought to life men torn by inner conflict, men who stood up for justice, truth, and dignity. From the heartbreaking bravery of Glory to the raw, electrifying intensity of Training Day, Denzel proved he was more than a gifted actor. He became a symbol of resilience, hope, and the power to rise beyond any limitation. Yet few people know that behind his flawless performances and commanding presence lies a quiet, lifelong injury, a small mark he has carried since childhood. When Denzel was just 10 years old, growing up in Mount Vernon, New York, basketball was everything to him. Every afternoon, he and his friends played until sunset, brushing off scraped knees and the burning heat. One day, in the middle of a fierce game, he dove for the ball and slammed onto the rough concrete. A sharp crack rang out from his right hand. Pain surged up his arm, but young Denzel clenched his teeth and refused to cry. After the game, he slipped his injured hand into his pocket and walked home in silence. At the front door, he paused, took a deep breath, and stepped inside as if nothing had happened. He saw his parents weighed down by their own struggles, and he couldn't bring himself to add to their burden. That night, he lay awake, cradling his swollen hand, suffering quietly, making not a sound. The injury healed, but not the right way. His little finger never fully straightened again, permanently bent to one side. What remained, however, was something far more important than a physical flaw. Through that silent pain, Denzel learned inner strength, the kind that doesn't ask for sympathy and doesn't quit. Over time, the crooked finger simply became part of who he was, a subtle reminder of a tough childhood and an unbreakable spirit. On screen, almost no one noticed. His hands, still clenched in moments of rage, reached out in scenes of tenderness, and eventually held an Oscar high, silently declaring to the world, "Nothing can stop me." In a way, that bent finger added to his authenticity. It brought a quiet rawness to his performances, a reminder that behind the legend is a real man shaped by hardship. When asked about it, Denzel once smiled and said, "It's part of who I am. It's the story of where I started, and why I know I can never give up." His finger may never straighten, but Denzel Washington's hands have never stopped working. They've signed historic contracts, lifted the highest honors in film, and most importantly, touched the hearts of millions. His life stands as living proof that determination and passion can overcome any limit the world tries to place on you. Wilma Rudolph, the unbelievable tragedy and triumph of the fastest woman on Earth. In the early 1960s, Wilma Rudolph's name echoed across America and around the world. She was celebrated as the fastest woman alive. Her 3 gold medals at the 1960 Rome Olympics transformed her into a global icon and a powerful symbol of pride for the Black community during a time still scarred by deep injustice. But behind the glory, few truly understood the miracle of her journey. Wilma Rudolph was born on June 23, 1940, the 20th of 22 children in a poor family in St. Bethlehem, Tennessee. From her very first breath, survival was a battle. Born prematurely and painfully fragile, she suffered through a series of severe illnesses, including pneumonia and scarlet fever. And then came the diagnosis that changed everything. At just 4 years old, Wilma contracted polio. The disease left her left leg completely paralyzed. Doctors told her she would never walk normally again. A life sentence delivered to a child who had barely begun to live. But that was not the end of Wilma's story. It was the beginning of something extraordinary. Her greatest ally was her mother, a woman whose strength refused to bow to fear or fate. Day after day, without fail, she massaged Wilma's lifeless leg. Together, they walked miles to reach hospitals willing to treat Black patients. That relentless love became Wilma's lifeline, her fuel, her hope. And then the impossible happened. At the age of 12, Wilma removed the heavy steel brace from her leg and took her first steps on her own, something doctors had sworn would never happen. The same leg once declared useless began to move, to strengthen, to believe. Few could have imagined that the thin, quiet girl who once dragged herself across dusty southern roads, watching other children play from the sidelines, would one day fly across the world's greatest tracks. But Wilma believed. At 13, she entered her first track meet. She lost. She finished dead last. Yet she refused to quit. Day after day, she trained relentlessly, under the scorching sun, through doubt, disbelief, and exhaustion. Wilma understood a powerful truth early in life. If she didn't believe in herself, no one else would. By 16, she earned a spot on the U.S. Olympic team and won a bronze medal at the 1956 Melbourne Games. It was confirmation. She was no longer chasing a dream, she was becoming it. Then came Rome. At the 1960 Olympics, Wilma Rudolph stunned the world. She captured 3 gold medals in the 100 meters, 200 meters, and the 4x100 relay, becoming the first African-American woman in U.S. history to achieve such a feat. As she crossed the finish line, the stadium erupted, not only in celebration of her speed, but in awe of the story carried by those once paralyzed legs. A girl told she would never walk became the fastest woman on earth. Legs that once trembled now flew. Wilma Rudolph didn't run just for herself. She ran for every child told they were too broken, too poor, too different to dream. And with every stride, she proved that faith, resilience, and belief can outrun even the cruelest odds. Wilma Rudolph didn't just win races. She redefined what was possible. Johnnie Lacy, an icon of the disability rights movement, a fearless advocate, a voice that refused to be ignored. But long before she became a leader who changed thousands of lives, she was simply a young woman with big dreams and an unshakable belief in education. Born in 1937 in Mississippi to a working-class family, Johnnie was bright, ambitious, and determined to become a teacher. She believed learning was a path to freedom, especially for young black students who, like her, were fighting against the weight of inequality. Her future seemed clear, until suddenly it wasn't. At just 19 years old, a polio outbreak swept across California. Small towns fell silent. Schools closed. Streets emptied. Fear hung in the air as families locked their doors, terrified of a virus no one could see. Johnnie, focused on her studies and full of life, never imagined she would be touched by it. Then, on one sweltering summer evening, she felt a strange exhaustion take over her body. Her legs grew heavy, unnaturally heavy, like something unseen was pulling them down. She brushed it off as fatigue and went to bed, expecting to feel better by morning. She never did. When the sun rose, she woke to terror. She tried to stand, but her legs wouldn't move. Panic set in as she reached down, begging her body to respond. It didn't. The night before, she had walked across her room and closed her door, just as she always had, never knowing those were the last steps she would ever take. Overnight, polio had changed everything. The weeks that followed were the darkest of her life. Once independent and full of promise, she was now confined to a wheelchair. Her dream of becoming a teacher felt shattered. At times, she believed her story had ended at 19. But Johnnie Lacy refused to surrender. With unbreakable resolve, she returned to college, pushing past inaccessible buildings, dismissive attitudes, and the deep-rooted prejudice faced by disabled black women. She wasn't just fighting for herself anymore. She was fighting for an entire community the world had chosen to overlook. Johnnie went on to become the director of California's Independent Living Center, leading powerful movements that demanded equal access to education, employment, and public spaces. To her, a wheelchair was never a symbol of limitation. It was a vehicle for change. Johnnie Lacy didn't just reclaim her independence. She transformed it into a movement. And in doing so, she opened the door for countless others to step into the light, recognize their worth, and claim the place in society they always deserved. Jim Brown, the legend, and the secret behind the glove. In the late 1950s, when America was still fractured by racial segregation, Jim Brown rose as something rare, a symbol of raw power, freedom, and defiance. On the NFL field, he wasn't just dominant, he was terrifying. Defenders bounced off him as he fused blistering speed with crushing strength. Many would later call him the greatest football player of all time. But hidden beneath that flawless legacy was a quiet sacrifice almost no one knew. In 1956, during a brutal, rain-soaked battle while playing for Syracuse University, Jim Brown absorbed a vicious hit. As bodies crashed to the ground, an opponent's cleat came down hard on his right hand. The pain was immediate, but Jim Brown didn't flinch. He clenched his jaw, got back up, and kept playing like nothing had happened. Only after the final whistle did he realize something was wrong. His pinky finger had swollen, turned dark, and gone completely numb. Doctors later delivered devastating news. The damage was permanent. There was no saving it. Amputation was the only option. For most athletes, that moment would have ended everything. For Jim Brown, it changed nothing. He returned to the field wearing a custom-made glove, carefully hiding the missing finger from the world. And then, he dominated. He shattered records. He bulldozed defenses. He redefined what unstoppable truly meant. For years, no one noticed. No one questioned it. It wasn't until after his retirement, when he transitioned into acting, that the truth finally surfaced. In a close-up shot, his hand gripping a weapon, audiences caught a glimpse. The world was stunned. Yet losing a finger never diminished Jim Brown's greatness. That hand, imperfect, relentless, still signed million-dollar contracts. It still locked arms in victory with teammates. And it still reached across generations to inspire millions. Because legends aren't defined by what they lose. They're defined by what they refuse to surrender. Brad Lomax, the man in a wheelchair who sparked not one, but two revolutions. In the 1970s, Brad Lomax was a fearless black activist, best known as a member of the Black Panther Party and a powerful voice in America's civil rights movement. He marched, he organized, and he spoke with fire for racial justice. But Brad's legacy didn't end in the streets or at the podium. His greatest fight was still ahead, one that would reshape history in ways few ever imagined. In the summer of 1973, under the brutal heat of Washington, D.C., as the struggle for equality raged on, Brad began to feel something was wrong. His legs felt weak. Climbing stairs, once effortless, became a battle. At first, he brushed it off as exhaustion from non-stop activism. But the numbness grew heavier, more persistent, until one morning, Brad woke up and couldn't stand at all. The diagnosis was devastating. Multiple sclerosis, a chronic, incurable disease that would slowly take away his ability to walk. A man born to lead marches now had to face life in a wheelchair. Many believed this was the end of Brad Lomax's fight. Brad believed it was only the beginning. In 1977, he returned to the front lines, this time leading the historic 504 sit-in in San Francisco. For nearly a month, despite worsening health, Brad refused to leave. When protesters were ignored and supplies ran low, it was Brad who reached out to the Black Panther Party, ensuring food reached the demonstrators and the movement stayed alive. And they won. Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act was finally enforced, securing groundbreaking civil rights protections for disabled Americans nationwide. In his final years, when his body could no longer carry him into the streets, Brad Lomax continued to fight in quieter but no less powerful ways. As he once said, "When I can no longer march with my legs, I will move forward with my heart." And that heart helped change America forever. Donald Galloway was more than a man. He became a compass for an entire generation. A trailblazing disability rights activist, he rose as a powerful advocate for independence, dignity, and equality, especially within Black communities across America. But long before he became a voice for change, Donald's world was filled with light. In 1951, in Berkeley, California, Donald was just 13 years old, a lively boy with endless energy, racing through sunlit streets on his worn bicycle. The wind on his face made him feel free. To him, the world felt wide open, bright, and full of possibility. Then, in a single, irreversible moment, everything changed. As evening settled in and the sun slipped below the horizon, a sharp turn, a sudden slip, and a violent crash shattered the life he knew. His head struck the pavement with brutal force. When Donald regained consciousness, the world he woke up to was no longer illuminated. It was silent, empty darkness. The doctors delivered the devastating truth. The damage to his optic nerve was permanent. His vision was gone forever. Many would have surrendered to despair. Many would have withdrawn, letting grief and bitterness take over. But Donald chose a different path. He began again, learning to move through life step by step, guided by sound, intuition, and sheer determination. He refused to let blindness define his future. Instead of focusing on what he had lost, he committed himself to discovering what was still possible. By the 1970s, Donald Galloway had transformed his personal tragedy into collective power. As the director of the Center for Independent Living in Berkeley, he became a leading force in the disability rights movement. He fought tirelessly for accessibility, education, employment, and equal opportunity for people with disabilities. To Donald, independence was never just about physical mobility. It was about dignity. It was about self-worth. It was about the right to live fully, without pity, without limits, and without barriers imposed by society. Through his relentless advocacy, He didn't just influence policies, he reshaped lives. And the boy who once lost his sight became a guiding light for countless others, showing them the way forward when the world felt darkest. Leroy Moore Jr. Born into a body that never stopped hurting. Leroy Moore is a poet, a musician, and the visionary founder of Crip Hop Nation, a groundbreaking movement that gives disabled artists a voice through music and poetry. But behind the powerful verses and raw rhythms that inspire so many lies a body that has known pain since the very beginning. Born in New York in 1967, Leroy entered the world already carrying an extraordinary burden. Diagnosed with cerebral palsy, his muscles were locked in constant tension, his limbs twisted by a condition he never chose. Doctors told his parents, "This boy will never walk like other children." But who decides how far a child's dreams are allowed to go? Leroy's childhood was a daily battle against his own body. Endless hours of physical therapy. Muscles on fire. Teeth clenched to silence the pain. Then, at just 8 years old, he made a decision that would define his life. He pushed his walker aside, looked at his mother, and said, "I want to do it myself." One step, then another. His small body crashed onto the hard floor, the sound echoing through the room. But Leroy didn't cry. Bruised and scraped, he grabbed the wall and pulled himself back up. And again. In that moment, fate learned something important. Leroy Moore would not surrender. When his body couldn't run, his mind and spirit soared. He turned to words, to rap, to poetry. Music became his movement, his rebellion, his truth. In the 1990s, he founded Crip Hop Nation, a hip-hop collective created by and for disabled artists, a space where their stories could be heard without pity, without apology, and without shame. Leroy Moore didn't just fight for himself. He shattered silence. He challenged stereotypes. He became a beacon for an entire community that had long been ignored. Once told he would never amount to anything, Leroy became the voice that lit the way for countless others, proving that disability does not define destiny and pain does not silence purpose. Frank Robinson. An imperfect hand. A swing that rewrote history. Frank Robinson stands as one of the true legends of American baseball, dominating the game throughout the 1960s and 1970s. With more than 500 home runs and the historic distinction of becoming Major League Baseball's first black manager, his legacy forever changed the sport. But behind the trophies and headlines lived a quiet story of grit, one that began with an accident that nearly ended his dream before it ever began. Born in Oakland, California, Frank was raised in a working-class family where survival came before ambition. As a teenager, he spent long hours after school working at a lumber mill to help support his household. Then came one devastating afternoon. While operating heavy machinery, his right hand was caught in the equipment, costing him his pinky finger, an essential part of gripping a baseball bat. For most athletes, that moment would have been the end, a career over before it started. But Frank Robinson refused to accept that fate. He relearned how to grip the bat. He reshaped his swing. He trained relentlessly, pushing through pain, frustration, and doubt. The process was brutal, but his resolve only hardened. By the 1960s, Frank Robinson wasn't just playing baseball, he was making history. He became the only player ever to win the MVP award in both the National League and the American League, defying every expectation placed upon him. His 500-plus home runs and 14 All-Star selections weren't just statistics. They were proof that limitations exist only to be challenged. Then, in 1975, he shattered another barrier. While still playing for the Cleveland Indians, Frank Robinson became the first black manager in Major League Baseball history. It wasn't merely a promotion, it was a landmark moment of representation, leadership, and progress. Frank Robinson's story isn't just about baseball. It's about resilience. It's about rewriting destiny with sheer will. And it's about proving that even an imperfect hand can leave a perfect legacy. Sly Stone. One uneven step that sparked a full-blown funk revolution. Sly Stone wasn't just a musician, he was a force of nature. A sonic rebel who fused funk, soul, and rock into the heartbeat of a generation. As the mastermind behind Sly and the Family Stone, he didn't just create music, He created a movement echoing the fire of the civil rights era and the raw defiance of the late 60s and 70s. But behind the electrifying stage presence and larger-than-life charisma was a secret few ever noticed. Long before the fame, in 1963, a young Sly in San Francisco had a taste for speed, for danger, for the thrill of the open road. One reckless afternoon, he pushed it too far. One turn taken too fast, too sharp. The motorcycle lost control, and Sly was launched onto the pavement. He survived, but his leg was shattered. The bones never fully healed. From that day forward, Sly walked with a permanent limp. For most, it would have been a limitation. For Sly Stone, it became transformation. He didn't hide it, he turned it into rhythm. On stage, that uneven step became part of the groove. His sway locked in with the bass line. His imbalance evolved into a hypnotic funk swagger. What should have been a weakness became his signature, raw, unpredictable, and unapologetically real. That limp didn't slow him down. It set the tempo. Through his sound, his style, and his refusal to fit any mold, Sly Stone didn't just perform funk. He redefined it. Ernie Banks, a name forever tied to hope, heart, and the unforgettable spirit of "Let's Play 2." Known to the world as Mr. Cub, Ernie Banks wasn't just a legend of the Chicago Cubs, he was the living embodiment of optimism and pure love for baseball. But behind that warm smile and cheerful catchphrase was a story few people truly knew. In the mid-1950s, a devastating injury left Ernie's right shoulder permanently damaged. It never fully healed. From that moment on, every swing of the bat, every throw across the diamond came with pain. Yet Ernie never complained. He never stepped away. Instead, he adapted. He changed his mechanics, refined his approach, and learned how to play through agony with grace. When teammates asked, "Does it still hurt, Ernie?" he'd flash that familiar smile and say, "Let's play one more, everything will be fine." And he meant it. Over more than 2 decades, Ernie Banks played in over 2,500 games and blasted more than 500 home runs, cementing his place as one of Major League Baseball's greatest icons. The pain never disappeared, but it was never stronger than his passion. For Ernie Banks, baseball wasn't just a game. It was joy. It was resilience. And "Let's Play 2" became more than a phrase. It became a legacy. A reminder of a man who refused to let adversity steal his love for the game. Jesse Jackson, a man with a quiet limp and a voice that moved a nation. Jesse Jackson rose to prominence as one of America's most powerful civil rights leaders, a living symbol of the struggle for freedom and equality. In the 1960s and 70s, he marched shoulder to shoulder with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., helping lead historic movements that reshaped the future of Black Americans. Few people ever noticed that behind his confident presence was a slight limp, an injury from a childhood fall in Greenville, South Carolina. But that pain never slowed his purpose. Jackson refused to be defined by physical limitations. He crossed state lines and social barriers alike, armed with nothing but conviction and a voice that could command a room. When Jesse Jackson stepped onto a stage, the limp disappeared. His words carried weight. Crowds fell silent, listening as he spoke of dignity, justice, and hope, challenging America to live up to its promises. Jesse Jackson became more than a leader. He became a symbol of resilience, courage, and the unshakable belief that change was not only possible, but inevitable. Bill Russell. Worn down knees. 11 championship rings. A dynasty built on pain and pride. Bill Russell wasn't just an NBA legend who captured 11 titles with the Boston Celtics. He was the backbone of an era and a symbol of unbreakable dignity for Black athletes in America. What few people knew was that during the peak of his greatness, Russell played with a knee that was never truly healed. In a brutal playoff battle in the 1960s, Russell sacrificed his body on a decisive play, crashing to the floor and badly damaging his knee. He received treatment, but the injury never went away. Game after game, season after season, the pain followed him, leaving him with a visible limp long after the final buzzer. Yet Bill Russell never retreated. Despite constant pain, he remained the Celtics' defensive heartbeat, dominating the paint and leading his team to victory through sheer intelligence, timing, and willpower. When an opponent once mocked his limp, Russell didn't respond with words. He responded with a thunderous block that silenced the arena. The injury didn't weaken him. It sharpened him. It forced Russell to play smarter, tougher, and more fearless than ever. Beyond the championships and the highlight reels, Bill Russell became something even greater, a trailblazer in the fight against racial injustice, raising the voice, respect, and legacy of black athletes in American sports forever. Hank Aaron wasn't just a man who broke records, he was a man who broke expectations. Behind those legendary 755 home runs lies a hidden struggle few people ever knew. History remembers him as the baseball icon who surpassed Babe Ruth, but what it rarely mentions is that Hank Aaron played much of his career with damaged vision in one eye. In the early 1960s, during a brutal practice session, a wild pitch smashed directly into his right eye, leaving him with permanent vision loss. For a professional hitter, where split-second timing and razor-sharp precision mean everything, it should have been a career-ending blow. But Hank Aaron refused to surrender. Silently, he adapted. He refined his mechanics, sharpened his instincts, and learned to trust his remaining vision in ways few ever could. Pitch after pitch, swing after swing, he continued to dominate the game. The crack of his bat sent baseballs soaring into the stands, igniting stadiums and silencing doubters. Those 755 home runs are more than a number etched in history. They are proof of an unbreakable will, the legacy of a man who saw beyond physical limits and carved his name into immortality. Oscar Robertson. Unbreakable records from an imperfect player. Oscar Robertson wasn't just an NBA legend. He was the living definition of relentless willpower. The first player in history to average a triple-double for an entire season, he set a standard so unreal it stood untouched for decades. But here's what most people never knew. For much of his career, Oscar played the game with damaged vision. Growing up on the rough streets of Indianapolis, basketball wasn't a hobby, it was survival. During one intense street game, a fight for the ball turned tragic when a piece of broken glass flew into his right eye, permanently impairing his sight. For many, that would have been the end. For Oscar, it was only the beginning. He trained harder, smarter. He learned to feel the game instead of just seeing it, reading movement, timing, and rhythm through pure instinct. His mind became sharper than any eyesight ever could. At the start of the 1961 season, an opponent mocked his bad eye. Oscar said nothing. Then he went out and dominated, scoring over 40 points, handing out assists, and locking down defense so tight his opponent could barely breathe. After the game, Oscar calmly looked at him and said, "Vision doesn't decide who the better player is, kid." During the 1961 to 1962 season, Oscar Robertson averaged 30.8 points, 12.5 rebounds, and 11.4 assists per game, numbers that still sound impossible today. Records made by a man with imperfect vision, but a heart, mind, and will that no obstacle could ever dim. Stevie Wonder. Stevie Wonder. The music that taught the world how to see. Born Cleveland Hardaway Judkins, Stevie Wonder is more than a musician. He is a living miracle. With over 30 Billboard Top 10 hits and 22 Grammy Awards, his influence on modern music is beyond measure. But behind the legend lies a story that quite literally began in darkness. Stevie was born prematurely in 1950 in Saginaw, Michigan, arriving more than 2 months early. Placed in an incubator, he was exposed to high levels of oxygen, which caused retinopathy of prematurity, leaving him permanently blind just days after birth. Yet what the world took from his sight, fate returned through sound. By the age of 8, Stevie had already mastered the piano, harmonica, and drums, learning entirely by ear. By 12, he had signed with Motown Records, beginning a journey that would transform music forever. Songs like Superstition, Isn't She Lovely, and I Just Called to Say I Love You weren't just chart-topping hits. They were anthems of hope, resilience, and pure joy. Stevie Wonder may never have seen the world with his eyes, but through melodies filled with light, he made the world see itself. Ray Charles, From Darkness to Everlasting Sound. Ray Charles didn't just make music, he changed the soul of America. With timeless hits like Georgia on My Mind and Hit the Road Jack, He reshaped the sound of a nation. But long before the spotlight, his story began in a poor rural town in Georgia, where life seemed determined to leave him in the dark. At just 7 years old, Ray lost his sight completely to glaucoma. His family, trapped by poverty, couldn't afford treatment. Yet, in that total darkness, Ray discovered a new kind of vision. At a school for the blind in Florida, he taught himself to play the piano, fusing gospel, blues, and jazz into a sound the world had never heard. Years of grinding in small southern bars sharpened his gritty voice and flawless touch. Then, in 1960, Georgia on My Mind swept across America, transforming Ray Charles into a legend and a powerful symbol of freedom, resilience, and hope for Black Americans. Ray Charles never saw the light of day, but he illuminated an entire era of soul music, teaching the world to listen not with its eyes, but with its heart. Clarence Carter, a voice born from the shadows of the American South. Clarence Carter was one of the most beloved soul singers of the 1960s and 1970s, unforgettable for his deep, husky voice in classics like Slip Away and Patches. His music felt raw, honest, and alive. But behind the spotlight was a life shaped by hardship from the very beginning. Born in 1936 in Montgomery, Alabama, a world marked by poverty, segregation, and limited opportunity, Clarence entered life without sight. He never saw the light of day. His family couldn't afford medical care, and hospitals for Black children were nearly non-existent. No one ever knew exactly why he was blind. It was simply another cruel fate endured by countless Black children of that era. But Clarence Carter refused to surrender to darkness. He taught himself to play the guitar, letting music become his vision and his escape. Every note he played, every lyric he sang, carried the weight of the Southern struggle, stories of pain, resilience, love, and hope. Through his voice, the forgotten and the broken were finally heard. Born into darkness, Clarence Carter used his music to light up millions of hearts around the world. They didn't let adversity define their destiny. Instead, they turned hardship into fuel, pushing themselves to heights most people could only dream of. If these stories moved you, share them with others. Subscribe to the channel and stay with us. Countless extraordinary journeys are still waiting to be discovered.